This episode of the Edifice Complex podcast is brought to you by Tether. Get smart, get tethered. Blue Rhythm commissioning software, and Sensor Suite, the future of intelligent buildings.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host and unofficial mediator, here with my colleague, official agitator, friend, and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, Sir Yoda.
Hello, Sir Yoda. Okay, interesting conversation today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first time I met today's guest, he was still learning how to shave. He holds citizenships in 3 countries, has degrees in political science and history and commerce. And that's going to be an interesting discussion because there's a lot of stuff we could probably learn from Bill today. And he's the North American president, one of the world's largest producers of building solutions, a company that goes back to 1918. But there's a DNA strand that runs through that company that goes back to the 1620s. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bill Gray.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Here.
Bill, when I go back and I recall the times that we met, and often it was on the floor of a trade show, and like today, you still find it really important to have those one-on-one relationships with your clients in the same way that you've built relationships with your colleagues and the teams that you're building today. It's a character trait that Adam and I admire in senior executives. So tell us how you got to where you're at and where that DNA of your skill sets come from.
I think I got into what I do running Uponor. I came up through the sales side of the business. I've always been frontline customer service, whether it was my first job in delivering newspapers as a kid and stocking grocery shelves and pumping gas. I've always I think done well in customer situations, and building one-on-one relationships is obviously just an extension of that. People, everything that we do is built around people. We rely on people to help build and run our businesses, our customers, and the relationships we have there. It's all about moving the ball forward with people you like to work with. That's really where I get my energy. So.
Yeah. And who influenced you on that? Was that your parents? Was it friends, family? Like those are character traits that normally, when I go back and I think about the people that I hired for my own business, and Adam, you're the same way. What you just said in terms of the newspaper routes and pumping gas in the grocery, I did all that too. And I asked people when we were interviewing, so what did you do in high school? Like, what did you do in the summertime? Like, how did you pay for those bad habits you've developed for the rest of your life?
I think probably, if there was money and a viable career in it, I'm sure that there is a viable career for a lot of people. I would go back to my favorite ever job, was being a bartender. And it's not for the fringe benefits. It's free booze and the so-called spillage. No, it's literally sitting across from people one-on-one, having either at one end of the spectrum kind of, just basic conversations about how your day's going, to, those repeat long-time customers who you get to know over a period of time, who check in once or twice a week or whatever, what their drink is. And you have a conversation that might start 1 month, and 3 months later it's the same conversation, but there's been gaps in between, it's just long-term relationships. I've always had those kinds of relationships that I can remember. Some of my best friends are people that I don't see but maybe twice a year, or check in with twice a year, but where you pick off exactly where you left off, and so there's a level of continuity. But coming back on the why bartending, I mean, it's it's just the relationships, it's the conversations, you get a feeling that you're moving through this journey of life in parallel and intersecting courses. So I thought that was one. And I say, who knows if this whole building products leadership gig doesn't work out. I can go back to that.
I think it's safe to say it's worked out.
So say that again.
I think it's safe to say it's worked out.
Yeah, my wife and I always had this. She was also similar in service industries, and we actually met working at the campus bar at university back in Halifax years ago. But we've always had this dream of a B&B, and I think a lot of people get into B&Bs with the dream, and then the reality crashes pretty quick. At least crashes on them pretty quick, and at least that's what I've heard. But the whole idea is that you can be a host of people in your premises or in your life, and serve as well as become a part of their lives. And again, it's this whole notion of traveling with intersections. I've always been fascinated by that.
So there is a great takeaway straight away. Be a host, right? So if you're running a business, all businesses are people business, and everyone's got to run a digital business. They just don't know it yet, right? But just taking that be a host thing, right? So no matter how digital and online you go, there is still a relationship element, right? And
yes,
some firms just forget that, I think. So be a host is such a great way I really love that, just to get that all into one thing. You want to lead, you want to have good customer relationships, be a host, be a problem solver, be a friend.
I remember back, it was in one of my iterations of school, of university, and coming across, there's a notion I think it comes out of a lot of the Middle East tradition, is this hospitality, and you almost had a sacred duty to take care of travelers and those kinds of things. And I don't know how that impacted me, but I often think about that is, again, and then this notion of we are all moving forward. We're going to a destination. It's not about the destination. It's about that journey. And then life is really about those check-ins or intersections that you have, those things where you collide with other people and other things. And that's really what, at the end of the day, I think when you look back, that's what your life is. That's what your reflections are. It's not, where I lived or what house I had or what car I had or whatever, or even the job or title or salary or anything. It's not that. It's going to be about those people and those meaningful intersections and or interconnections that you build. So I've kind of had that perspective, but yes, I think that one of the strengths that I bring and one of the most useful things was being in hospitality. I always look for that, full disclosure when I'm looking at a resume for potential candidate. If somebody's had that kind of experience in their past, that's a plus on that resume, because I think there's a lot that's built in that. I think of, again, going back to bartending or restaurant service industry. If you look at the way some of those folks work, they're handling multiple things at the same time in a very high pressure environment. So if you think about what work is like now, we're always asked to do more with less. So if I look at project management, or if I look at some of the challenges, the people who can make it and the people who don't necessarily make it, it's you're dealing again with trying to provide high quality in a hectic environment with a lot of ambiguity. I mean, now if you look at the current situation with COVID, we still need to serve our customers, and our customers' worlds are on fire at the same time ours are. Yeah. We all don't know what's going to happen next. And so people who can, again, deal with pressure, deal with spinning plates or juggling balls, or whatever analogy you want to use, I think those are useful skills. And that background of hospitality, I think, is really to have done that successfully shows some character traits, some skills that are definitely transferable to the world. I remember talking to my father-in-law, who was in the he was a dentist and taught at Dalhousie University, and he was on the student admissions. And one of the things he always looked for in that role was people who had either coaching or team leadership, captain of a team, those kinds of things. For the very kind of, they're looking at skill sets that are transferable, indicative of the type of things that you're going to have to face in this new career. And now with all the data sets you can have, you can say those are things that are predictors of success, etc. But my view on that would be, I think hospitality and sales and service go together.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Robert, are we there yet? I'm bored.
Adam, I know it's hard to believe, but the future has finally arrived in Canada.
How's that then?
Well, smart remote building and equipment management is now available from SensorSuite.
Go on.
SensorSuite, yep. They're an innovative smart building technology. We like them. They can monitor, control, and optimize anything in your building, saving you time and energy.
You mean SensorSuite are moving Canadian buildings into the 21st century?
Yeah, I know, another hard thing to believe, but they're doing it, and they're saving owners money with efficiency gains.
Okay, I'm in. How do I find out more?
Got to go to sensorsuite.com or call 1-855-773-6767. And also check out the July 2020 episode of the Edifice Complex podcast and listen to SensorSuite CEO Glenn Spry.
And now, back to the show.
The business you're in at the moment, Uponor, which we're going to talk about in a minute, let's say the construction industry, for one of a wider term, right? So that's a very transactional, like kill or be killed type business, right? But what you're doing there, you're bringing in that like be a host, pay it forward type mentality. And that's interesting because when I coach people, I always point out, particularly engineers when I coach them, the engineer never runs a firm. It's always a generalist. Why is that? Right?
That's the curse of knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, the curse of knowledge, and being an awesome engineer means typically, don't everyone get triggered here, you're not great at interpersonal skills normally, right?
I think facts and data can get in the way of a good story is another way to say that.
Yeah.
Engineers, my challenge with running a building products company where marketing, the best marketer in building products is still a very technical data dump type of the sales. But where we try to stand out is to really bring true marketing to that. And if you think about what marketing is, it's really looking at identifying problems and trying to find a unique or innovative solution for that. And then bring that solution to market and hopefully make an economic return on your effort. If you look at engineering, it's about, in some ways, solving a problem in the most efficient way possible. And sometimes those two things collide because the efficiency doesn't necessarily allow for a lot of innovation and thinking outside of the box. So we have a challenge at Uponor as to how do we make our very technical, engineering-oriented people think like marketers, which is more about innovation and different ways of solving problems. My experience is engineers are very quick to tell you the why something won't work, which is what they get paid for. Because I'd like to know why the bridge isn't going to stay up in the air when I drive over it, as opposed to the marketer who might say, well, under these conditions, it could.
Exactly.
I want a little more certainty than that. So it's like everything. There's a tension, a push-pull between those things. One couldn't exist without the other. And I think engineers, or we could be a very engineering-driven company, but it could get in the way of being an innovative company. And if you think, I sometimes say as an exaggeration to make a point that. And I'm not sure how aware people, the audience is of what one of our unique differentiators is, but it's that's PEX pipe with the cold flare expansion, where in other words you expand PEX pipe, which has that elasticity, insert the fitting, and then the fact that that pipe always wants to go back to its original extruded shape creates a very positive, very simple, very positive connection by deforming around the barb and the fitting and all those kinds of things. I often say to our engineering folks who are in marketing, if some guy came with that product today in our thinking, we would tell him 100 reasons why it wouldn't work and why we don't want anything to do with that business. Yeah. So that's, again, the exaggeration to point out really to that team is you got to really continue to think about new and novel and not discount just based on kind of a built-in predisposition to want to go with what's worked in the past.
Yeah, so I want to have a discussion about copper versus PEX actually, but let's do that once we've spoken about who Uponor are. Yeah. So first question is Uponor. That's a pretty cool name. How did that come about?
I sometimes joke that it's a Finnish. It's a. I won't even go. That's maybe not for this one. We'll cut this one out. This will be edited out. So Uponor actually does have a meaning. It doesn't mean anything literally in Finnish, but Upo means brand, loosely translated. Right. And Nor is obviously Nordic, so Nordic brand. If you put the two of them together. I remember a few years back, Volkswagen had the commercial or the advertisement where they introduced the world to the concept of Farvergnügen. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Well, I try to sometimes extend Uponor to meaning innovation in Finnish. It doesn't, but that's kind of my my off the cuff answer sometimes, because it is an unusual name, and you're probably not too surprised to realize how many times it's mispronounced. Yeah. And I've heard some really good ones. I always like, if I'm going to speak somewhere or I'm on a panel or something like that, and there's two things in my bio that get the person that's going to introduce me that really get them hung up, and they always come over and say, "So how do you say your company name? And what was the school? What was the university you went to?" And so the university I went to was Dalhousie, which if you're Canadian and understand that we don't have that many schools, and Dalhousie is quite well known, it's easy for us to pronounce it. But I get Dalhousie, I get whatever, and then of course Uponor is Uponor or what was the Uponor? Uponor is probably the most common one.
Yeah, North America. That sounds right. Uponor.
Yeah, and then of course you get the chuckle Uponor. Which in the plumbing industry, that's probably not surprising.
Well, that's why. So when we're down talking to the U.S. on some of our classes, and we get harassed for putting "you" in words like mold, for example, or color. Mm-hmm. And I said, the only reason why we put "you" in the words is so that when we use the word louver, you don't get confused.
I like that. I do have to say, though, moving to the U.S. and getting accustomed to U.S. spellings, we did have a lot of redundant "u's" in Canada.
Yeah. There's a lot. The reductionism actually sometimes works when you're dyslexic like I am. The reductionism in American spelling is awesome.
Very well said.
Yeah. So maybe I should change my name to Bob for you, Adam.
I can spell that. That's good. 3 letters. I'm all good.
That's too much. Keep the O in the middle. You're good.
So. Robert mentioned that your firm, Uponor, goes back to 1918 and has a link back even further than that. What's that about?
So if you think of we have 3 segments: North American Building Products, European Building Products, and then our infrastructure division. The North American Building Products, the heritage or the legacy is the Swedish company Wirsbo. Which is actually a small town about an hour or so outside of Stockholm, and it's Wirsbo Brook. In Brook, when you add Brook, it means works.
Right.
Same way as we would say works. So Wurzbo Works was a small metal forging. Any town, like back in the Middle Ages, any town that had a running water would have a water wheel.
Yeah.
That water wheel would be harnessed for power, for milling grain, and running a forge and all those kinds of things. So Sweden is fairly rich with iron ore, and so these works, these forges are. I mean, there's probably hundreds of them at the time. But this one, actually, the water wheel and the little town of Wurzbo still exists, and we can track the Wurzbo company, which is the North American legacy company of Uponor. We can track that back to the 1620s as a continuously operating company on that same piece of real estate. So in the 1980s, 1988, Uponor, which was a company that had its start, a Finnish company that had its start in the wooden furniture business. As they were growing through, they took wooden furniture, turned into plastic furniture, which turned into this emerging plastics industry, turned into focus on plastic pipe, which then looked at, well, how are we going to take our value prop? Then the rest of the Uponor businesses kind of fell away, which during that time they had appliances, and they used to build refrigerators and deep freezes and those kinds of things, all for the very small Nordic market. And Europe in those days was very protectionist, where a small company like that could exist and be viable. But as the borders fell apart and competition came, then it became more challenged. So they took kind of their assets and put their investments into plastic pipe business. The Wurzbo company, of which there was a North American entity, Wurzbo North America, was purchased in the 80s. Now they changed the name under a kind of a brand unification effort in 2005-ish, I think. So Wurzbo North America became Uponor. Which was quite interesting, because a lot of obviously a lot smaller impact, but when you looked at the radiant heating market, which is a small piece of the North American HVAC industry, if the Wurzbo name was kind of the Kleenex of the radiant heating business, and so a lot of people wondered, why are you kind of destroying brand equity of Wurzbo? You've built this up, and it was so strong, in fact, that when I was approached in Canada to take on the opportunity of the GM of Uponor, I said, my little question was, what is Uponor? And then if you noticed on their letterhead, probably for a decade, 2005 to 15, we were always Uponor, formerly Wurzbo, in our letterhead. So Uponor still does have a lot of brand equity. When I was early in this job, I took the president role in 2012 after having moved to the U.S. And one of the, we're not a huge business. We're about 1,000 people, kind of approaching about $500 million. And we live we're in the Twin Cities area, which is home to the highest per capita Fortune 500 companies. So the brands in the Twin Cities are 3M and Ameriprise and United Health. And I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar companies. And then there's little Uponor, but we got the opportunity to go on a Greater MSP Business Show, which was a half-hour broadcast show on Sunday mornings for forever. It was on maybe for 50 years. And the host of the show asked a similar question. She says, I haven't heard of Uponor. What is that? And I said, well, you probably know us for our underfloor heating, our radiant systems. And she says, well, I never heard of that, but I got a Wurzbo system. And I said, that's us.
Yeah. It was funny, Bill, like when you guys went through the change like that, and I couldn't believe it because of all of the goodwill that was associated with the Wurzbo brand name. And I can't remember who it was that was at that time, but I offered to buy the brand name. I said, well, if you're going to zero value it, I'll take it. For some reason, they wouldn't sell it to me. I
can't imagine why not.
There was literally, I believe, we had almost some very senior defections from the company. There was a lot of passion around the Wurzbo name. Now we still keep that name. Our heating systems and our heating pipe is still branded with the Wurzbo name, but it's a sub brand to the Uponor brand. And when you think about branding activities and how companies work, in my past life, we've had some, I worked for companies that had very, very strong brands in their space, but they were part of a greater company. And the power of brands in an increasingly crowded market, there is a lot of rationale for trying to group them under single meaning or a single brand that represents a meaning and a promise that customers can identify with, and more importantly, is something that you can leverage as you build into parallel or adjacent markets. So if you think about where have we taken Uponor or Wurzbo, where have we taken that? We were underfloor heating until the early 2000s. Predominantly, we were known as that as their business. Underfloor heating is the smallest part of our business today. And we've grown significantly, but we've leveraged the Uponor name through into residential and commercial plumbing, and now even extending beyond PEX, because we were always synonymous with PEX piping and PEX A piping specifically. Now we've launched another polymer pipe, which allows us to go into bigger diameters, higher pressures and temperatures, so more of a commercial building, so tightening up. So we've leveraged, again, Uponor to go farther into that space, so that the promise of Uponor means similar things across all of those verticals that you're operating.
So it's funny, like when I think about the businesses that I was involved in over the years of my career, and I was always taught to believe that, the sequence, public relations comes before marketing, comes before sales. In other words, getting the brand recognized, and then creating that demand for that brand, and then obviously capitalizing on the sales. And when I look at Uponor and then Wurzbo before that, you were masters at doing that. And when I think about European companies that have come to North America and succeeded, and those that have failed, that public relations was a big part of it. And Uponor and your team, and this is one of the things that impresses me about you guys, is that you have a macro message that extends beyond just getting a purchase order for a product. And I think that has run through the veins of your company for as long as I've known you, And there's a lot to be said about that. You get a lot of other companies that are so focused on getting the purchase order, they forget about why they exist. And I think with Uponor and before that Wurzbo, is that there was a bigger story that you were trying to tell in terms of building environments and sustainability. Like you were talking about that long before anybody else was.
If you think back, I think that it's Peter Drucker, that kind of management guru that everybody knows, who said that businesses exist to serve customers or to create customers. And I think that you have kind of ends of the spectrum. You have companies that have parts and pieces and widgets, so to speak, that they can manufacture, so they push them to the market. Or you have companies that exist at the other end of the spectrum. Everybody's somewhere on that spectrum or on that continuum that exist to serve customers and be one step ahead of customers. In other words, understanding not necessarily just what they need today, but what direction is the market going. And if you look at a company like Uponor, who started out in radiant, that was a non-existent industry with a promise that it's a better way of comfort. And that's that's I think where Uponor and Robert Bean intersect, is it's a better way of doing something. And if you're trying to teach a better way, then there's a lot more involved in the sale or the conversion of customers or advocates for that product. So that automatically causes you to have to go deeper and to understand needs and on a different level. I go back to saying that part of Uponor's legacy and why we can extend into other markets so easily is our heritage is going to customers that they didn't know that Radiant was better. So you teach them, you help design, you help apply, and then ultimately you hope that they're going to buy your product at the end of the day and you actually get paid. But you've advanced all of the relationship and knowledge and the transfer of knowledge and building that business on a goodwill basis. I mean, you've done that. We didn't get paid for training our Radiant folks for the most part. We didn't get paid for building that, but we hope to live off the revenue from the pipe and fittings and manifolds and controls that we sold. So there's a legacy there. The challenge with that is once you've transferred that knowledge, then the companies, Robert, that you're talking about can come in and sell them pipe and or manifolds and or fittings and or controls. They don't once you've done that initial knowledge transfer, they don't need you after you get to a certain point. And I always say that, Atlantic Canada, one of my experiences there was probably one of the higher densities of radiant heat or penetrations of radiant heat in the market. Was once everybody knew that you needed a 12 pipe, the average design was either 8 or 12 inches of pipe, of 5/8 pipe on center with a 20-degree delta T or temperature differential. And you really, with Radiant, some people will shudder when I say this, but you really got to be about 50% accurate. In your design, with design days accepted, because the system will work. Will it work optimally? Will it work as best? No, but you have this margin of error built in, so customers could automatically now. They don't need Uponor at that high price PEX A. Some PEX B, whatever product will be good enough, and then they can pocket the rest of that money and live quite happily. So you have customers that buy into your value proposition, that understand that they want to do a great job and they want to serve their customers. Those are the ones that we want to serve. We're not interested necessarily in the guy who's, I don't fly by night or 50% accurate and the thing works 85 times out of 100. No, I'm not interested. So there's a value prop, and then you can say that's built into our legacy, our DNA. We're about training the industry. We also know with Radiant and with our plumbing that we have to not only be at the codes and standards tables and meetings and committees. We've got to be there and hoping to shape those for the future, because those bodies are notorious for being resistant to change, and for good reason. And for good reason. You want to have those checks and balances with new technology, especially when you're building, homes and houses and buildings that are going to be around for 100 years. That's a long time to have something that's not right. So we try to play all sides of that, shaping, trying to be positioned for what's next, and that's probably some of the things I think that when you make the comment, Robert, that we're different than everybody else. There's people who want to be part of that, and there's people who are more comfortable being in the more commodities side of that, which I just want to sell the pipe, I just want to sell the fittings, I just want to train, or just want to do controls. That's fine, but ultimately somebody's got to pull it all together, and the system needs to be integrated, and the customers, whether it's the contractor, the engineer, or the end user, all want to be satisfied.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Adam, it's time to thank some people who are on our side. Blue Rhythm Commissioning Software.
Blue Rhythm is the commissioning software I've been looking for. Most projects I consult on suffer from poor information and document management. Frankly, it's just chaos out there. Blue Rhythm removes this chaos. It is a secure, always available cloud solution designed to work on any computer, tablet, or smartphone. Their Android and iOS apps allow seamless transition between online and offline work. But what I like most about Blue Rhythm is their painless and fast onboarding process. Our team will bring all your existing forms and checklists into Blue Rhythm for you, or you can use or adapt their pre-built, pre-functional and functional performance test sheet templates. But it's more than that. It enables collaboration, automation, and easy planning and project management for all your projects. Blue Rhythm provides amazing support from a team that really understands your industry. To find out more, go to bluerhythm.com or call country code +1 612 460 8305. Also, you can hear from Blue Rhythm President Andy Martin on episode 26 of the Edifice Complex podcast.
And now, back to the show.
I'll give you an example. We got into a discussion with basically the people you were describing who were just there to sell the product at any price. And we were talking with them about, listen, it's the success of the brand doesn't happen really in the first sale. It's when someone asks for it on the second time around, right? And so we said, why would you want to create a no-name brand product for future consideration? Like if I'm buying a house, 50 years from now or 40, 60 years from now, I want to recognize the name. I want that name that has been around, has established a foothold, has not come and gone like many companies do because they can't afford to stick around because they didn't make enough money, And that's what happens with some of these low price operators, right?
Yeah.
Is they just can't sustain their operations. So why, as a home buyer, if I'm going to invest and pick a number, $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million home, why would I want to have something in there where there's no depth to the product? They come and they're gone. I want to buy something that's going to be around, and that something I recognize in the future, and that takes profits. You can't create long-term recognition, the brand name, on a shoestring budget. You have to be profitable. And the industry that we're in, Bill, your company has managed to survive a lot of that cutthroat operations, and kudos to you for doing that. We are getting close to the end of the interview. One of the things about this interview is people in school, in business colleges, engineering colleges, listening to you and your words that you have, what would you say to somebody that's, studying today? Well, your own kids, would you tell them to go to business or engineering? Well, that would be my first question for advice. And what advice do you have for kids in school these days, thinking about where we are today with COVID and where we're going to be in 4 years' time when they graduate, or 8 years' time and graduate if they're working on an advanced degree? What would you say to them?
I think first, I've reached some level of maturity. In other words, and by some insurance plans, the AKA Freedom 55, I should be on my way out now. I'm not going to because I really like what I'm doing. But I think one of the advantages of getting to a certain age is that you have perspective. And the perspective gained for me is, I think a lot of kids are given the choice on what they want to do, but the reality of the professions that they choose, whether it's medicine, law, dentistry, whatever, those high-end professions that people so-called aspire to, you really got to, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to have to find your level of happiness and satisfaction inside of each one of those choices, whatever it might be. I know lawyers who are, completely studied a lot, had high hopes, and then when they come out, they just don't. The chosen profession just doesn't meet the expectations or the excitement or the satisfaction. Medicine, dentistry, all those are very similar. So there's an element of what are you bringing to this profession as a person. So you have to continue to be open to continue to be curious about that and drive it forward. So you got to know yourself and what's going to excite you. I know contract or plumbers or guys who I went to school with who became plumbers and roofers and few guys that went to sea in the Coast Guard or in the Navy or whatever, who are far happier than the folks who are doing these other things. It's about a perspective that they gain, is that they look at life a little bit differently. And I think that's really where true happiness is going to come from, is how do you look at life, and are you continuously excited or interested about the things that are going on around you, and how resilient are you as a person? All those things. It's pretty hard to maintain an element of optimism with some of the things that are going on now, but there's a lot of optimistic people, and those optimistic people are the ones who are going to lead us forward. So I would say that no matter what you do, stay curious and stay optimistic, and always look for the new things that are happening that are going to change, and you'll find a lot of happiness in that. And I don't think it matters what profession. I think that there's I do joke a little bit. Like I said, I'd love to go back to being a bartender, because I think that resonates most with the types of things that make me happy, which is, continual change, continuously. I like a little pressure. I think I do well under pressure. I like to meet new people, and I'm fascinated. I'm a naturally curious person. So most people, if you give them the opportunity, you can learn something from them. So keeping that open mind, and not, I think if I learned anything, it's by prejudging or trying to guess what's going to happen in a situation. I often find out, if I'm honest with myself, how wrong I am. By some elements, actually, I get paid for guessing what's going to happen now, in the sense of forecasting the business. And even in that perspective, I try to look at how long can I keep my options open when I haven't committed to one side or another. And that's pretty much how we're approaching this COVID thing, is we're not battening down the hatches and stopping everything in the face of a lot of economic uncertainty right now. We're trying to do prudent things to trim back where we can, so that we're maintaining as many options going forward as you can. And if I look at what you mentioned, my kids, I have two daughters. One that's just graduated high school this year, heading to university next year, and one that's heading into 10th grade. And yeah, I tell them learn a trade and then go to college.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't listen to me anyway, so it doesn't matter. But that was the advice that my dad gave me, was learn a trade and then figure out what you want to do, because you can always fall back on the trade.
Yeah.
I was dumb and didn't listen to my dad, so now I give that advice. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I want to ask you about so I'm coming to the end. So what I was fascinated about when I was looking at the Uponor website was how I started 40 years ago, right? So a plumbing supplier was a plumbing supplier, and a plumber was a plumber, and never the twain shall meet, right? And and a designer was a designer. So what I really liked about the Uponor website was the mix of supplier versus design advice versus, intellectual training, right? So you've got Robert on there doing a course, FYI, everyone listening, right? So, that the evolution of that from where I started 30, 40 years ago is just immense, right? That's not recognizable. But the other thing I'm fascinated on is, so kudos on that, but what I'm fascinated on, when I first moved here to North America, which was about 14 years ago now, where I come from in the UK, forced air heating and cooling is for social housing. So when I came here and realized I was going to have a wood-built house with forced air heating and cooling, I was horrified. And I insisted to my realtor, get me radiant heating and a brick-built house. Well, she laughed, and I didn't get any of that. But radiant heating, so the thing I really zeroed in on your website was radiant heating. So let's assume you've got all the money in the world, and I put a gun to your head. Does your house have radiant heating or cooling? Yes.
My house that I live in today, yes, it does. And it's as I've been at Uponor for 2008, what's that, 12 years, and it's the first house I've had radiant heating in. and it was a Wurzbo system when we moved in, and that was part of what sealed the deal for me. So yes, we do, not throughout the house though, only on I kind of live on the side of a hill with a walkout basement. So the walkout basement piece has that. In fact, the office I'm sitting in has radiant. The only thing that I've done is redesign the boiler system for it since we moved in. But the distribution system or the emission system was there, the heat emitter system. But what's one of the challenges in North America is there's a larger part of the market which is cooling, and you do need a redundant system in most of the North American climate. And I think in the UK climate, at least, there's still a lot of homes that don't have any have central cooling. So that's probably plus I think it's energy costs, right? I mean, North
energy is
America,
expensive in the UK. I still think energy is almost free here. I'm so used. Gas prices, energy prices look very low to me in North America.
One of the things that at some point in I remember that you could sell a ground source heat pump system based on an ROI.
Yeah.
Now, if a guy's on a propane tank or only has electric out in the middle of the country, you might get an ROI. But if there's gas anywhere near that, you don't choose ground source heat pumps for their ROI. You choose them for self-declared green reasons or efficiency reasons or longevity reasons. But so there's those kinds of challenges. I've often kind of half-heartedly commented that probably one of the best things that could happen to the HVAC industry in North America is a doubling or tripling in gas prices.
Absolutely.
It would probably be great for the sustainability movement as well. It would obviously be very uncomfortable and a huge dislocation for a huge part of the population because retrofits would not be cheap.
Yeah.
But again, I think longer term. I think in the UK also you build houses with a lot longer life span. It's nothing to rip down a 50-year-old house here because it's cheaper to build newer with the newer building envelopes and technologies and those kinds of things. So
no, agreed. And you're right. Professionally what I found here was making the case for a heat recovery ventilator is impossible. Because payback's 1,000 years or something stupid. It's like, who's doing that? Unless you're doing performative virtual signaling, when there's a lot to be said for that, actually. Yeah. That's the triumph of LEED, the marketing of LEED. It gives you something to boast about when you wouldn't do it for any other reason. And that is the genius of LEED, actually. So just one last question then. You've got all the money in the world.
I think though, just on that point, though, is I believe that it's been demonstrated that LEED or energy efficient buildings actually have a better return on investment in almost any real estate market, and I think that people have proven that. So operating cost does become important. So I think there's an investment case. It all depends on who you are. If you're a developer to sell, then no. But if you're a developer to own, that might be
that's the difference.
I've seen some papers on that.
That's the difference. The long-term ownership makes a big difference. Yeah. I'm not a fan of building certification. I think it's a load of marketing poop in the big scheme. However, it takes you to the right direction. The right answer is performative targets in building code, but with lobbying and all the slowness that goes on there, them things are always 10 to 15 years behind current situation, right? So one final question then, gun to your head, you got all the money in the world, you are Blofeld. PEX pipe or copper pipe?
Oh, PEX all the way.
Top man. I would go copper, but I think it's because I'm an old dude.
You asked me about my house and whether I have radiant. I've got radiant, but I also have copper plumbing.
Right.
And I just happen to be sitting in my office below the kitchen. So even if you don't look at the efficient productivity and efficiency advantages from a contractor's perspective, I mean, every time my wife turns the kitchen tap on, I hear the water running through the pipe above my head. Now, if that was PEX, if that for nothing else, it's quieter. And I mean, I think the best house you live in is you don't hear when the toilet flushes or the
that drives me mad in my house.
What's
You
that?
get $1 million houses where I live, and you can hear it when someone uses the washroom. It drives me crazy.
You know, I mean, you've all been in hotels with paper thin walls, and you know, I mean, how annoying it is when your neighbor gets up to have a shower.
Yeah.
But you know, when you've got another 15 minutes before you got to hit the snooze button.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't understand given those choices. We should probably do, and we do it a little bit of a soft sell on that. But I believe that's probably one of the best things is you just don't have the noise of, and then when they shut the tap off, you don't have the water hammer, and and you don't need hammer arresters and all those kinds of things. So I would say that is a significant improvement in building, whether people realize it or not.
Well, it's a comfort factor. And thank you for using the word tap and not faucet. That made me feel very homesick.
That's my heritage.
Exactly right.
Well, Bill, listen, thanks for coming on. You know, your own story, there's a lot that students today can listen to in terms of, you know, being that frontline person, the hospitality, being the host. Even if you're an academic or an engineering nerd and you want to have an engineering company, ultimately you have to deal with people. And you've done a masterful job of doing that, running a technical company. And Uponor as a firm, when you look at high performance buildings across the world, not just in North America, but across the world, the name is always there. It doesn't matter hospitals, museums, whatever facility that's getting awards today especially the last 15 years, your name has been attached to those buildings. So good job on that. Keep up the great work. Love working with you guys. Always loved the message, better human environments. And I'm all about that, as is Adam. As practitioners, we're always looking for that part of it for our clients. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and appreciate the interest in Uponor and the support. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Robert, I have questions. Why aren't our buildings more like cars? Shouldn't our buildings warn us if something is wrong and could impact our health and safety? Why can't our buildings tell us how efficiently they're working? Why?
Well, they fit, Adam, and they can. Our philosophy is designed for people. Good buildings follow. This whole indoor environmental quality thing is becoming real important all around the world. Well, Tether have developed a mobile access property identity engine, and that enables landlords and property managers to monitor indoor environmental quality metrics plus energy consumption. It's all about making better decisions based on real-world information. Get smart, get tethered. For more information, go to tether.co.nz, and you can also hear from Tether CEO Brandon Van Blurk on our June 2020 episode of the Edifice Complex podcast.
And now, back to the show.
So, Adam, another great interview.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Uponor and Bill because, they just a plumbing business, right? Either installing or supplies or anything. That can be a bit vanilla, a bit boring, but I encourage everyone to go and visit their website, and I'll put the link in the show notes. This is more than a plumbing business or a fixtures business. This is a solutions business. I loved his concept of be a host to your clients.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, that was my
he made a statement there about the Middle Eastern philosophy, a sacred duty to protect the travelers coming through. And I've seen Bill do that, at conferences. And he always wasn't always as confident as he is today to stand up. I remember the very first time when he spoke in front of a crowd. It was a large crowd. It was in Las Vegas because they had this annual event.
Yeah.
And like anybody else that gets up and starts to speak to thousands of people. But he's always got that steady confidence underneath him. His words of advice to, people in school. He talked about his friends in the trades or whether it was the professions, but know yourself, stay curious, stay positive. In today's circumstances, people are listening to this podcast in the future. This is COVID time, right? We're into, what is it? It's like the March, April, May, June, we're going to be approaching 4 months of basically a lockdown. Staying positive is hard to do, but really that's what's going to get us through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was really turned out to be a great interview about soft skills. And, the engineer never runs the engineering firm. Please take this on board, people. If you want to lead, be a leader, be a team person, run a business, you've got to deliver at scale. That means soft skills as well as being great at your job, right? Yeah. It's not and or, it's normally both. So please take that on board. No one says this to you when you're in college. One of the great disasters of university colleges, no one sits you down and tells you the facts of life. They just pump you up, fluff you, push you out the door, and then you blunder around till you learn the life lessons the hard way, I guess, right? That's how it happened for me.
Yeah. Well, Michael Gerber wrote a couple of books, The E-Myth. That was about the entrepreneurial myth. And there was a great message in there, that you can be the technician or the business owner, but you can't do both unless, you just can't. Pick if you love the engineering and you love the technical stuff, then go work for an engineering company. But if you want to be the owner of an engineering company, you have to be that leader, and you have to decide where you fit. And to try to do both is just going to cause grief for you. I remember when we had our business, but we sold to Danfoss, and I had just got out of school, University of Calgary Business Owner Transition Program, and it was a come to Jesus meeting. I had to decide what the hell I was going to do with this business. Was I going to be the business owner, or was I going to be the technical guy, right? And ultimately, I had to decide that I love the technical side, but I also like the business. So I actually brought my brother in, who's an accountant and a professional. He's the guy. I could trust him, and he knew what he was doing when it came to finances, general management, operation of the building, making sure that we had, a strong fiscal plan going forward. And of course, my training at the University of Calgary Business Owner Transition Program fit with his philosophies, which we learned from our dad. And so, having him and letting him run the business while I ran the technical side, it was perfect. That's what allowed us to grow.
Yeah, but there's a lot. So this all comes down to self-knowledge. Know yourself. Be honest with yourself, right? Yeah, if you want to be a striker for Chelsea, can you actually put balls in the net? Is the question, right? It's not personal. It's not, I don't like you, Adam. It's, can you score goals, Adam, right? That's the question. There comes a point where your mum has to stop telling you you're awesome at everything, because you're just not, right? Yeah. You've got to sit down and decide, there's nothing wrong with being a great engineer, but, and if that's your strength, go for it, because an engineering job is a great job. But don't kid yourself you're going to be the CEO of the firm, because you're not, unless you broaden your skills to take in soft skills and find a way to deliver at scale. This is the key thing. People used to come to me and say, Adam, how do I be a partner? How do I be an associate in the firm? And my answer always was, well, I look at you and you're doing that. And what that normally meant was you have clients who would go apeshit if you left, right? Yeah. You deliver projects at scale with team members around you, right? You've scaled your skills. Yeah. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to be an associate or a partner. Please understand this.
Yeah, that's true. And so think about the trades guys, right? And you and I both know a lot of trades guys who are multimillionaires. But at some point, every one of them had to have that same heart-to-heart discussion with themselves about, do I like being on the tools, or do I actually like managing this business? And we know that when you think about, a lot of it comes down to where they get their sense of security. If they get up in the morning and they know they have a job because they can assemble pipes and fittings, then that's where they gravitate to. But if you're the type of individual that gets up in the morning and looks at your current net worth and the share value of your company, you're the business guy. So the trades guys running a business will never get any bigger than the person's own comfort level with this company.
Correct.
But if you want to become a millionaire, like a lot of successful trades guys are, they had to have that meeting with themselves about what is this really all about. Am I interested in increasing the value, share value of my company, or am I want to make sure I got a job in the morning? And those are two different people.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with having a skilled job and earning money. Nothing wrong with that at all. But, sitting there and resenting it because you're not the manager or you've not got your mansion, then you need to have a very straight conversation with yourself, right?
Yeah. And I think I think that's one thing about Bill is that he's very good at that with himself, but he's also very good without people around him, having them ask those tough questions, why are you here? Like, what drives your passion?
See, the other thing I take away from Bill and Uponor, and I love that name, Uponor, I love saying that word, Uponor, that's awesome, is that, you can take the most traditional, boring, steady business and make it relevant in today's economy, right? That business of plumbing supplies, fittings has evolved, and it's almost now a knowledge business as well as a service business, as well as a physical business, as well as a manufacturing supply business, right? And that is a function of leadership and vision, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't happen on its own.
Nope. No, it doesn't, right? Well, and they've embraced that. Like they've said, how do we become important in society as a manufacturer and vendor of these types of systems? And they are incredibly important to the way buildings function and the environments that we create inside buildings. And so, it's one of those aspects that most people in society don't appreciate. What the contribution is of these systems. They just don't get it. Like, they're just pipes behind the wall or in the floor, or, out in the city or whatever, but without those pipes, we would not be the civilization that we are. There's no doubt about it.
There was a lecturer at one of my colleges I went to, and he said, who or what has saved the most lives in the last 200 years? So everyone's thinking, it just went all over the place. And he said, the person who invented plumbing. Yeah. Right? Because that brought public health, sanitary conditions, sanitation, hygiene. And, it got rid of so many diseases at scale, right? So if you take away malaria, that's probably the next big one, right? No one thinks like that because, was it in the Prince of the Pauper? What is essential is invisible, right? You only know it's essential when it don't work. That covers building services, plumbing, sewage, all that stuff you don't like to think about, right? Until it don't work, boy, do you start thinking about it hard.
Yeah. Well, there's two things, right? I mean, for people who are online listening to this conversation, the value is if you plug something into your electrical socket and it doesn't work, you freak out. You flush the toilet and there's no water in the lines, you freak out. Yeah. So electrical and plumbing, hey.
Yeah. Totally essential, man, right? And that's the beauty of a career in these things. You can come in, you can be a skilled tradesperson, you can be a salesman, you can be an entrepreneur. There's so many ways to go with it, right? Because it isn't going away anytime soon.
No, as long as we have biological needs and needs to power stuff up, these particular trades are always going to be needed. And, we didn't get a chance to talk, Bill, about, the direction for people in school, maybe have ignored the trade path. But he did make a point, his dad said, get a trade first. And my dad said the same thing, get a trade just in case, that you always have something to go back on. Yeah. And I got to tell you, that was the best advice he ever gave me. Even today, like yesterday, I was applying the knowledge that I did as a framer, as a cribber. We're doing a bunch of work here around the house. There is honor in an ability to use a hammer and a saw and a screwdriver.
Yeah, just so the listeners know, I'm eating my own dog food as well. I've told my son that, and he's actively trying to become an apprentice electrician because they're not going away.
Nope. You'll always need them. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, take away what you will from that. But I found that quite inspirational, that episode, and I'm bloody glad we had him on, actually. That was good.
Yeah. Awesome. Adam, always a pleasure, man.
Okay, mate. See you next time.
All right. Take care. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes. See you next time.